Alright guys, the big game of the week is Sea of Stars. It is finally launching on the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and things are looking incredibly good for the indie studio Sabotage Studio with their next big game after The Messenger. Right now, we are going to be looking over reviews on Metacritic, in addition to the review average and tally on OpenCritic, as we add in a new dynamic of having both of the aggregate scores kind of put together to see. Because right now, we have a little bit of an imbalance. On Metacritic, there's only a certain amount of reviews. On OpenCritic, there's more reviews. Metacritic's website is also notoriously buggy at the day of launch, whereas OpenCritic runs a lot smoother. So we are going to be using the snippets of the reviews from Metacritic and looking at the overall review score, which you guys can see in the thumbnail, in addition to OpenCritic and looking at what's going on there as well. But before we get into it, guys, what's up everyone, OJ here, welcome back to the video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. Now let's go ahead and jump right into it here. We're going to start off with Metacritic. Right now, the game is at an 89 average. There's around 13 to 16 reviews as of the time that I'm recording this video. Once again, it's kind of buggy. It's going back and forth. But right now, it's looking like a Metacritic must-buy once more of the reviews come in from what's been posted on OpenCritic. Now, we're going to go ahead and start off with the top reviews. Then we'll get into the middle reviews and then the bottom reviews. Now, the Enemy gives the game a 10 out of 10 with Sea of Stars and has this to say. Sea of Stars carries on the legacy of some of the greatest RPGs of yore, such as Chrono Trigger and Breath of Fire, with some modern sensibilities and beautiful pixel art. Its combat may get a bit repetitive after the player figures out some patterns, but the quality world building and strong characters make the game a worthwhile experience throughout. God is a Geek with a 10 out of 10, and they had this to say. Sea of Stars is the new benchmark for turn-based RPGs, with sublime combat, a cast of charming characters, and a soundtrack that's an all-timer, and that's Yasunori Mitsuda on the soundtrack of Xenoblade and Chrono Trigger fame. Next up, from Hey Poor Player, they gave it a 10 out of 10 and had this to say. I've played a lot of retro-inspired RPGs over the past few years, and while I've enjoyed many, rarely have I come away with the opinion that they can hold a candle to their inspirations. Sea of Stars, on the other hand, not only manages to confidently stand shoulder to shoulder with the greats, but in many ways improves on them to create an unmissable JRPG experience. All right, good stuff there. Now that is the 10 out of 10 scores. Let's go ahead and get into the 9 out of 10 scores. This 9.5 out of 10 is from Cultured Vultures, and they have this to say. Sea of Stars is a love letter to classic 1990s JRPGs that transcend the genre and perfects the form. 9.5 out of 10 from Noisy Pixel, and they say, regardless of your love for classic RPGs or those that pay tribute to those eras, every general fan of the genre should play Sea of Stars. Games Radar Plus with a 9 out of 10, and they had this to say. It's a joy and a relief to realize that Sabotage hasn't merely mimicked classic 90s JRPGs, but committed to understanding what makes them tick. Its nostalgia is neither gratuitous nor cynical, instead working to spar references together with original ideas into a coherent whole. While it's a little disappointing to discover that there isn't great depth to the turn-based battles and other systems, the immense quality and detail in the pixel art, soundtrack, location design, characters, and plot ensures that Sea of Stars remains a stunning achievement to the end. And we're starting to see a little bit of a theme here that the battles, while fun, do seem to lack a little bit more of that extra oomph, that extra depth to really kind of get those people that love the stats and love the depth and battle mechanics to really kind of engage those people. But everything else is so good, it's making up for that. Next up, from Shack News, they gave it a 9 out of 10 and had this to say. In true Sabotage fashion, Sea of Stars faithfully captures the nostalgic appeal of retro turn-based games while improving upon its systems with contemporary innovations. The witty, self-aware dialogue and charming cast of characters are bolstered by thoughtful design choices and a compelling narrative. Sea of Stars is an instant classic that retro RPG fans and newcomers alike will not want to pass up. Next up is from PC Games N, and they gave it a 9 out of 10 and had this to say. Sea of Stars is a worthy pseudo spiritual successor to some of the greatest JRPGs ever made. It improves on what made those games so special by modernizing their magic through balanced and engaging turn-based combat wrapped up in an enthralling world to explore. Now, I do want to add one more thing here, guys, to the whole point about the combat system. Now, if you've played the demo, there's actually some pretty tough stuff there, and there's some optional bosses in the game as well that's absolutely going to test what you know about it. So rest assured, I want to make sure that people do know that. Rest assured, there is definitely difficulty for those that want to seek it out. Now, next up is from Game Informer, one of the OGs when it comes to reviewing games. They gave it a 9 out of 10 and had this to say. Sea of Stars is a stellar throwback that appeals to fans like me who love 16-bit RPGs, but it also functions as an excellent entry point. Annoyances that hinder early games that inspired Sea of Stars are nowhere to be seen. Simple actions like moving around the world feel great. The story picks up quickly, and farming experience is effectively unnecessary. It all leads to a smooth, consistently thrilling adventure with fun combat, all in a gorgeous and inviting world. I'm one of those weird people that like to farm experience and like to really get into the battle systems and stuff like that. So depending on who you are, it might be a positive or negative, but I've always been a big fan of making sure that you earn your worth, and I know that a lot of people don't like that. So it's definitely going to be 50-50 or 60-40 or however you feel on that. All right, let's go and get into the 8 out of 10 reviews. This one is from Checkpoint Gaming. They gave it an 8.5 out of 10 and had this to say. A polished, cleverly designed, and utterly joyful experience, Sea of Stars takes the best parts of classic RPGs and distills their essence into something at once comfortably nostalgic and refreshingly modern. Its combat system twists traditional turn-based combat into a satisfyingly tactile blend of strategy and execution, making exploring every inch of its glorious world an absolute pleasure. Despite some odd pacing in the final act and the occasional cringy joke, Sea of Stars holds up as a fantastic modern RPG and a must-play for fans of the genre. Alright, next up is an 8 out of 10 from IGN. You guys know them, of course. And IGN had this to say. Sea of Stars is an excellent tribute RPG that channels the best parts of its 1990s era forebears like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, and even Star Ocean: The Second Story. Wow, what a group of games to be compared to. Let's continue on here. Because of that, it's fair to say that its world, graphical style, and mechanics aren't wholly original, but there are enough interesting twists in its 30-hour story to make for a rich and enjoyable experience of its own merit. This isn't just nostalgia fodder. That said, its twitchy combat can be difficult to get a handle on, and once you do, it only stays interesting for so long before its limited customization options make it start to feel just a little repetitive. That's made up for by a strong soundtrack, an approachable and endearing story, and a wide number of fun zones and boss fights that make this a trip worth taking. Now, once again, IGN also brings up the lack of customization, the lack of battle depth, which is definitely an issue or can be an issue for many people, but once again, it makes up for it by having a lot of the other things. I think if they actually went a little bit more in the battle depth here, this review score could have been higher for a lot of different reasons. Now let's get into the last 80 score. That's from Game Reactor UK. They gave it an 8 out of 10 and had this to say. You have to hand it to Sabotage. Sea of Stars is an immensely precise gaming experience from start to finish, whether it's progression, challenge, combat, or the surprisingly fun Wheels minigame. It's a polished, honed, and checked to make sure it all works together. So that sounds, in terms of the last part, sounds like it would have been a higher score, but I'm guessing there's some other things that they pick apart more deeper into the review. Now, last but definitely not least, we have the last 70 score from Metacritic. PC Gamer gave it a 7.9 out of 10 and had this to say. Sea of Stars may not truly recapture the magic of 90s RPGs, but it's still a polished, enjoyable blend of old and new, which is funny because a lot of people say that it does recapture, then this person says that it doesn't. So the whole 90s and recapturing the old school era, I guess it's up for interpretation, but I would say simply based off of what I've already played, because I actually have a demo gameplay that you guys can check out if you want. Based on what I played, it definitely recaptures the magic of the 90s RPGs. Now, it might not be as good as the top ones in anyone's opinion, but to sit there and say that it doesn't recapture some of that magic with the music, with the visuals, with some of the combat options, with what it does, I think that's a little silly to not say that it doesn't recapture the magic of the 90s RPGs. I think it definitely does, based off of what most people have played and the reviews. You just might not like it as much as some of your favorite 90s RPGs out there. So let's go ahead and let's get into Open Critic a little bit here, guys. Open Critic, there's actually a 95 top critic average. It's got a mighty rating, which is Open Critic's version of the Metacritic must buy. So when you see that little label Metacritic must buy, Open Critic has their own, and it's called Mighty. That's like the person there with the cape and everything. So it's pretty good. So far, every single critic recommends in terms of the critics recommending, and also once again, 95 out of 100 or 9.5 out of 100 when it comes to the overall score for Open Critic. Now there's 21 reviews, and many of the reviews are some of the ones that we went over, but there's just a lot more reviews as of the time that I'm making my video. So you guys can definitely check that out. It's on Open Critic. It's one of the top games if you want to go over there to look. It's looking really good. Once again, looking really good. 9.5 out of 10 overall. So let's talk about Sea of Stars just a bit more, because I did not get a review code for the game, but I will be doing a review spot for the game when it comes to a sponsored video. So I will be doing that. But I do want to talk about how good this game is, just because before I even got that sponsored spot or anything like that, I was touting this game as a Chrono Trigger inspired game, a game that can live up to the 90s RPGs, a game if you've played, if you were there in that era, this one is going to remind you of all the great things about it. And based off of what I've played, yeah, absolutely. I think that it definitely reminds you of really good things from the 90s RPGs. Now, I'm not going to go as far to say that it beats out Chrono Trigger or beats out some of the best 90s RPGs, but I will say that it does modernize a lot of the aspects that I think today's gamers might find tedious with old school 90s RPGs. It says, okay, we're going to give you something that you can play. We're going to give you something that's going to give you a great story. It's going to give you great music. So I don't think necessarily it's perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And there really aren't many perfect games. Once again, it doesn't beat out Chrono Trigger. I don't think anything that I've read or that I've played so far actually beats out Chrono Trigger, and that'd be crazy for people to expect a game to beat out Chrono Trigger. It's such a legendary experience that's just made by a dream team of developers. However, I will say that Sea of Stars is one of the few indie games that can really kind of come close to recapturing that crazy magic that we saw from the golden era of JRPGs in the 90s, like we saw from Breath of Fire, like we saw from Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore, Illusion of Gaia. There was just so many great RPGs in the 90s, and Sea of Stars does kind of give back that vibe, does kind of give back that essence of what made those great. Now you combine that with what we got last year with Chained Echoes, this is a good follow-up. This is a good 1-2 punch, and while it might not be exactly what we got back in the day, it's something where we can look back and say, okay, let's try this one out. And like one reviewer pointed out, this could be a great entry point for those who maybe don't play JRPGs, or maybe you want to get into this style of game. This could be a good one to kind of jump into with a demo, in addition to having a not full price. It's not 60 bucks. I think it's $34.99. So right here, this is a great opportunity for people who want to get into it that have never played this style of game, or for those who are into JRPGs and are into this style, here's another one to play. And whatever issues that you have or whatever the case is, that's fine, but at least they're trying to do something like what we got before. And this game took a long time to come out. It was delayed, I think, a couple of times. It was supposed to come out in 2022, and then it might have gotten delayed again in 2023 to later to this point. So I'm just happy for Sabotage Studio. Good stuff on their end. And yeah, let me know what you guys think of Sea of Stars. Do you plan on picking up the game at this point, maybe later down the road. What do you feel about the review so far? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out our other videos for other RPGs like Xenoblade, Chained Echoes, and more. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.